Hello, everyone, and welcome to Liberty and Consciousness. I'm your host, Kareem Mays. We are the Essential Libertarians, giving you the tools you need for self-governance. Today, I'm joined by my returning guest, Caleb. Caleb, how you doing?
Good, man. How you doing?
Awesome. So before I get started, I just want to let you guys know, if you're watching this and you want to keep the libertarian movement going, particularly the Ron Paul revolution, which we're here for, go to the lpmisescaucus.com. Here you can sign up either through their form here. You can take a look at resource podcasts, a lot of different Austrian thought, a lot of individualist thought, and get involved in the movement if you're in the United States, so we can overcome the current predicament that we are in. So that is LP Mises Caucus. So let's start off with our best friend. You know him. I know him. So I'm going to assume everybody's heard of what happened. Alec Baldwin used the weapon incorrectly. I don't know if it was loaded or not loaded. I don't know if he's going to get in trouble or not. I don't want to focus on that so much, but I have the article. So I'm just going to make a point here. They're saying the onset gun safety issues and misfires days before fatal shooting. We can see them here. The camera operators and their assistants were frustrated by conditions surrounding the low-budget film, which is interesting, including complaints about long hours, long commutes, waits for paychecks, according to 3 people familiar who, were not authorized to comment, which is interesting because I bet you they signed an NDA and they're like, don't say anything about this. Like, the working conditions are terrible. The working conditions are terrible on Alec's set. I just can't say anything about it. And then the safety protocols and the standard, whatever they are, including gun inspections, were not strictly followed on Rust near Santa Fe. And they said at least one of the camera operators complained last week to a production manager about gun safety on the set. And then he said the stunt double actually fired 2 rounds after being told that the gun was cold. Linko for a weapon that doesn't have any ammunition and blanks. There should have been an investigation of what happened. The crew member said there were no safety meetings, no assurance, and it wouldn't happen again. All they wanted to do was rush. So I'm not going to go super far into. Usually some articles I'll break down like, okay, what do you think the details are? If it was loaded, if there were safety meetings, I think there's 2 things people aren't mentioning. One, regardless of whatever it is, Hollywood people, military personnel, police, or I would call, in my opinion, civilian, like security, how I want to see it, there should be the basic understanding. If you have a weapon, especially a gun, assume it's loaded. Just like if you have a knife, assume it's sharp. Like, I don't take a knife and be like, hey, I wonder if this is sharp. And I think that's the basic thing that Alec Baldwin, because he thinks he's, a big Hollywood actor, all these elites, they try and act like they're better than, they know more than everybody else. And to their credit, yeah, I think he's a decent actor. But my biggest problem with this is not so much, well, should we train Hollywood actors and stuff like that? I think there should be a course or something. But I think the more important thing is, one, if you're going to use a firearm, always assume it's loaded. I think that's just common sense.
Well, that's rule number 1. That's rule number 1 of gun safety. It's crazy.
Yeah. And the second one is, and I really want to point this out because no one's talking about this. I even debate libertarians about this, and they're like, man, the elite, if you want to do this, the elite and, this person and that person. I think it's interesting. Alec Baldwin, who doesn't know anything about guns, lectures people on guns. I think it's interesting that Bill Gates, who is not a doctor, lectures people about medical procedures and do this and do that, even though when Joe Rogan says it, who's not a doctor, the media come after him. Chelsea Clinton talks about white privilege when she has like $10 million apartment, I've seen. And then the list goes on and on. Paul Krugman somehow still talks to people about economics with inflation. So I just want to make the point that elites really aren't that elite. They might have family connections or government connections, but beyond that, they don't know more than me or you. And I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Nah, that's 100% accurate. I mean, just mentioning Alec Baldwin in itself, I think it was a year or so ago, he tweeted out about the accidental discharge of a firearm by a police officer, saying that they shouldn't be able to have this. And this is like, come on, dude, you just do the same thing and you're going to say, oh, I'm deeply distraught. Like, really? Are you deeply distraught? You want to run your mouth for a year about guns and say, let's take guns away from people. Nobody can be responsible. And then you yourself are irresponsible. Like, it just proves that they're the same level as any other person. There's nothing special about them.
Yeah. And that's been my biggest thing is that people like, oh, I'm like, I want to do this, whether it's, end the drug war and, some bad government policy, get the debt, fix the money. They're like the elites, Kareem, the elites. I'm like, they're people like you and me. They put shoe on one foot, and sometimes because they think they're better than everyone else, they do stupid things. And to me, this is almost a perfect highlight of me saying, hey, look, maybe these Hollywood celebrities aren't as competent as you think. Maybe Bill Gates isn't really savvy with medicine at all. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe Krugman's advice is garbage. Maybe you should take a look and see that these so-called elites aren't really elites, other than they've accumulated a lot of Federal Reserve notes and property and land, whether it's legitimately or illegitimately. And that's the biggest thing I would say, more than even the firearms thing. Because I think any basic, like if you go to a range, they'll say, hey, look, treat the gun like it's always loaded, military, anything like that. Treat the gun, that's fairly common sense. But no one's pointing out, hey, these elites like Alec Baldwin don't know jack. They don't know anything. And do you really want people like these? Like people always make this argument like, oh, they should make decisions for your life. Do you see how bad the decisions they're making are? And if that is the case, I think that explains a lot of reasons why we're in certain positions. Like Fauci, I don't think he's ever been a doctor. He's just an administrative doctor. He just talks a good line. And people say he went to Cornell. Yeah, he did. Okay, fine. Do you want a cookie? Still doesn't, in my opinion, make him better than me or you saying, hey, I found a natural cure online. And like Joe Rogan's doctor did, and I'm going to try it. And it worked for me. So, and that's all I really want to say about that. Also, I am going to highlight one thing because I saw a lot of people posting this, courtesy to Jack Foe and my previous co-host, Max. I took a look and I said, like, what's a good firearms person, or organization that's standing up for stuff? And the NRA, I don't think is very good. There's a lot of bad ones, I think, that do this and do that. I think the Firearms Policy Coalition is fairly good when it comes to supporting gun rights and ensuring a victory for the Second Amendment. So if you're interested in that, if you are a firearm owner or if you want to learn more about them, you put your email and zip code here. You can take a look at the resources, and you can also get email updates. So with that being said, I think I got a spicy topic for you. I really want to get your opinion on this. So the reason I'm not focusing on Alec Baldwin too much is, yeah, they're celebrities, and celebrities doing goofy things is to me like not that big a deal. Like when Alec Baldwin, or this is a tragedy, but I don't focus my whole like presence around it. Everybody's been talking about it in depth. I want to do something different.
Right.
So I think you saw, I posted on Facebook, Sundan. What's going on? Apparently they're tired of corruption too, except I kind of like what they're doing in a way. So what's going on is hundreds of people are getting out, going to the presidential palace and asking for the military to dissolve the government. So let's break this down. And as you can see, there's protesters outside the presidential palace here, the capital Khartoum, calling for General Abdel Fattah el-Burhan, the head of the armed forces and Sudan's joint military civilian sovereign council, to initiate a coup and overthrow the government. What's been going on is Sudan's been grappling with a lot of political crisis in a 2-year transition. The military and civilian groups have been sharing power in a troubled alliance since a long-standing President Omar al-Bashir was dethroned in 2019, with a coup as well. But following a failed coup attempt in September attributed to forces loyal to Bashir, military leaders have been demanding reforms to the Forces of Freedom and Change, FFC, coalition, and replaced of the cabinet. So, civilian Prime Minister Abdel Hammouk has called the ongoing fiasco the worst, most dangerous crisis since Sudan's transitionary from autocracy. Civilian leaders have also accused the military of aiming for a power grab. I'll just say the last thing here. However, demonstrators assembled by rebel groups and political parties who have aligned with the military demanded otherwise, and a protester echoed on the ground on Tuesday so they would continue with their agitation until Abdullah Hamdok finds a solution or he leaves or his cabinet leaves. So I'd actually like to get your perspective on this for two reasons. You know, I'm all for secession. I'm all for freedom. I'm talking about it here in PA. My question is, though, we have a slim route even here in a well-developed country, okay? We get you in office. We get me in office. First, we nullify the feds. Maybe we start a free state project, and then I say that's proof. Can we leave? And then we get New Hampshire, maybe a few other states to join us. And that's hard. But they don't have, like, I want to secede. They can't, like, fill out or put any legislation to my knowledge. They have to use military means. Now, the problem with that is they tried that in Egypt. They tried that in other Arab Spring countries. So it's kind of like, it's hard for me. I know people want to say, like, the headline looks great, and it does. Sudan wants to dissolve their government. But is the military the best way, or what do you think is the best way in a third world country where governments are overtly expropriating, as opposed to here they make you fill out a form and they pretend to be nice, then they go after you. I guess my question is, in a third world country, what's the best way to get away from an overtly oppressive state or regime? Is the military the best way? Are they doing the best thing, or do you think there's another way? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Non-compliance. The non-compliance from every individual. That's the best way. Using the military is just going to set a precedent that the military is going to have some authoritarian rule at some point during the whole process. They're going to be able to make decisions themselves. Their generals, their leaders, putting those generals or those men into positions of power to make those decisions could be toxic to what they're trying to establish. All power corrupts. So really the best way to do it is through individual non-compliance and fighting back and defending their own rights as individuals. But some people would say that's anarchy. Essentially, that's defending your property and defending yourself, and that's what they need to do. I don't know what type of firearm ownership they have over there, but that's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah, I think it's fairly restricted in Sudan and these countries and most places in the world, because if people have firearms, they'll dictate it. Now, the only problem I actually have is, or I guess the big thing I have is, I would love to see libertarians on the world stage, because I think the issue in Sudan is they don't have the same civic capital as we do, like an understanding of property rights, the non-aggression principle, or basic ideas of how people should socially interact in these institutions. Now, Somalia, if you're familiar with me, I think we're roughly fairly in the same age. Black Hawk Down, they found ways, even in those tribes, to socially cooperate after the Barre regime, which even in a country like that, it improved under anarchy, with all the warlords, with all the problems, with all the issues. And I pointed that out on this episode. When I talk about essential libertarians giving people the tools for self-governance, I really do say that, hey, even in third world countries without governments, they can find customary law and norms to work with. But I think it would also help to get people who want to dissolve their government or minimize it to like a minarchy or just a night watchman state, which I'm fine with as well. Here's different methodologies of social cooperation that work. Because the only problem I have is some people in America think, oh, if you just put a Jeffersonian democracy everywhere, it'll work. And I'm like, how well did that work in Afghanistan? How well? I don't think it would work in Sudan. But if they had some basic understanding of property rights norms and some basic understanding of like the non-aggression principle and their own customary law, something like Sharia law, I think it could work. I think that is the best thing. I do like the fact that I like the spirit of what they want to do. It's kind of actually like the Trump movement in some ways. I like the spirit of what they think and what they want to do. We want to get rid of this government. I don't like the method they're using, which is, get the military to dissolve the government. But the fact that they're talking about dissolving the government's making me like, yeah, go Sudan.
Right.
So,
Yep. It's energetic.
yeah, at least because I want to show people like here, like in third world countries, they're fed up. They're fed up. What's it going to take for you in America to, get a little bit, get a, just a little bit angry, a little bit like, hey, if these third world countries are seeing it, what precedent do we have to set, for you to get there? And I know some people say, well, it's not bad here and now. Well, if you wait till it's bad here now and then try and address it, it's like addressing a health issue when it's gone out of control. It's not a good idea.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I'm reading a book that I just got. It's called The Liberty Solution by Derek Wills. I just picked it up off of Amazon. Friends with him on Facebook. And he mentions that in there that the state, the embodiment of the state can actually distract people and hide the problems that actually exist. And people get comfortable and complacent. And that's what's been going on here in the US for so long. Everybody thinks it's not bad now, but really the state just has a veil up. You can't see it all. And when you open your eyes and you look at like homelessness, the welfare state, everything along the lines of that, then you get a better realization that we're on a bad path. I think if more people were open to that, then we probably would see that type of change come into question.
Yeah. What I'd argue is a lot of people say it can't happen here, or why don't they just follow the Constitution? I'm sure they've hit you with that. Well, they're bad. Biden's bad. I agree. Trump did some bad. Obama did some bad things. But if they just follow the Constitution, and what I want to say is they have no incentive to do it. It's as bad to me as saying, why doesn't the guy or the criminal who's armed follow the gun-free zones? There's no incentive. And especially if you're a politician, you have that authority, you can get away with it. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights, they're going to slowly erode. And as far as I'm concerned, and you correct me if I'm wrong, the people we have in power and the defense contractors aren't really any better than these Somali warlords. In fact, sometimes they're worse because they try to be, I have a suit and tie, I'm a CEO. But they're as bad as warlords because they want the same thing. They want to subjugate people under their rule using force, whether it's through the state or the thing. They just want to be friendly and nice about it and, celebrate, use the LGBT flag and celebrate Pride Month. But really, Raytheon, all these people and the politicians and lobbyists and Congress that enable them are no better than these warlords to me. They are more veiled, but they're not really any better. And the more and more they get around the Bill of Rights, the more and more these authoritarians just disregard every, if you want to call it, block or everything that's stopping them from doing a full authoritarian rule. You might see a situation similar to Sudan where they're just as bad. It's just going to take longer because they have to find ways like, how do I circumnavigate the Bill of Rights? Which are why I want to emphasize decentralization, and at least the original Articles of Confederation is the only way. It's not going to work if you just change political leaders from Republican to Democrat. I don't know why people still think that, but I feel they've been conditioned to. So that's what I want to say on Sudan.
Right. You can't vote your way out of what we have going on right now. That it's going to require, each person to actually stand up and just pretty much say no, like we were talking about with Sudan. The Constitution in itself is a good idea. It has good intentions, but it's a parchment barrier. James Madison said that himself. Spooner said that it was powerless to prevent a centralized government. People don't realize that. So it's like slapping a Constitution on the side of your house and then getting your door kicked in with a red flag law. It's just a gun-free zone sign in a way. No, it's going to take people to do something.
Yeah. And even funny enough, people are agreeing the Republicans are going to, Dan Crenshaw voted for red flag laws. Literally the guy, in my opinion, that fits the perfect Republican, Texas military veteran, which I'm not taking that away from him, but then he goes and votes for something I don't even think you should be allowed to vote for gun laws. That it's very clear. The Second Amendment to me is the most clear thing. The right to bear arms shall not be infringed. That's it. It's not a discussion. at least I'd say the First Amendment, you can say, okay, fine, based on property rights norms. If you say that, or the Fourth
Right.
Amendment, okay, I had a warrant, but did I enter this way, or is metadata collection? We can discuss that in a free society. But Second Amendment, just gun laws, they're wrong. And with the people of Sudan, I want to encourage them, like, hey, I love the spirit. Maybe the military is not the best way to get things done, even though I understand why they want to do it. Trust me, I do. So with that being said, I know I said France. Let's talk about Italy. Luke was covering this. People were talking to me. They're saying it's bad now. It's rough now. And what I want to tell them is there's people in the world also, in developed countries who are standing up. And I was kind of inspired when I saw this in an interesting way. This is from France 24. Italian police use water cannon on port protesters. So they have a thing called the Green Pass, which I would equate to, the passport idea here. There might be some subtle differences. I don't have time to study every government policy, but basically, let's just break it down. The police in Italy used a water cannon and tear gas against protesters in the northeast port of Trieste on Monday, following a 3-day demonstration against a new mandatory workplace COVID pass. So I think it's the same thing as they're trying to do here.
Mm-hmm.
Dozens of police in riot gear faced off against hundreds of remaining demonstrators and port workers who began blocking one of the port entrances Friday to protest the introduction of the Green Pass, which I think is the same as what they're trying to do here. And they shouted, "Liberty, liberty, we're not violent, put down your shields," which to me is beautiful. And the police managed to clear the entrance with a few hours of the standoff, pushing demonstrators to a nearby parking lot from which they marched towards the city center. And basically, they said by Friday afternoon, more than 1,000 protesters were participating in a sit-in at Trieste's main plaza, and the Trieste dock workers had called a strike Friday despite being offered free Rona tests, and their protests attracted demonstrators from out of town. What is the Green Pass? Just to brief people if they're wondering, I think it's the same thing here, but it offers proof of getting this procedure, and recent recovery from Rona or a negative test became mandatory in all workplaces on Friday throughout Italy. The new regulation spurred a wave of protests across the country, although most were small and not disruptive, and more than 6,500 people demonstrated at the port or at the height of the protest Friday, though more than 85% of Italians over the age of 12 have received at least one of these medical procedures, qualifying them for the pass. But there remain up to 3 million, which is huge to me because Italy's not a big country, in retrospect to like America, Russia, and China, population-wise. 3 million workers estimated to be not getting this procedure. So my biggest thing here I want to highlight is I'm excited that people are not afraid to oppose these passports or Green Pass or whatever, nice name you want to give this authoritarian mandate. I'm excited to see people in Europe are really standing up. And they're like, some people here say like, oh, it's not too bad. Why don't you they're willing to get shot by a water cannon. And if you've ever been, I haven't, but I can guess how that feels like. Not only does it hurt, but 3 million people there are not complying. And I'm excited to see people all throughout Europe and the world not only opposing and asking to dissolve government, but just standing against these huge government policies. And I just saw this in Italy too, which people tell me Italy had the worst effect of this COVID. Whether you want to debate medical stuff, that can be another discussion. But supposedly they got hit super hard with this, and now they're standing up against it, which to me, I'm really, really excited for this as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts about like just this peaceful demonstration. They're chanting liberty. It's really nice. Get them in the Mises Caucus.
Right. Yeah. Well, hey, if we could branch out to other countries, let's go ahead and do it anyways. Like you said, you want to establish some libertarianism. We'll do it the right way. So, yeah, no, it's great. And honestly, you said that Italy got hit the hardest. And, right then and there, just a good indicator that I'm sure natural immunity worked as well as anybody would think it would. Those 3 million people, I'm sure have antibodies. So why is the government putting the force on them? It comes down to totalitarian control. When you have a people that are not compliant, they're going to keep tightening down restrictions more and more. And like you mentioned, they made it mandatory in all workplaces. It makes you wonder about here in the U.S. if
Yeah.
right now we're looking at companies with greater than 100 employees. Maybe that was just a slow rollout because they don't want too many people getting pissed off at one time. So
Yeah.
what's next? Next executive decree is everybody to go to the grocery store, to buy gasoline, to, like essential functions like that. I'd be concerned.
Yeah, and that's actually so 2 points. I really like you brought that up. First is here in the U.S., they're like, okay, fine. I everybody wants to jump through hoops. Okay, I'm down to 100 employees, or I have independent contractors now. They're going to put another barrier, like you said,
Yeah.
the grocery store. Then okay, I'm growing my own food. Okay, now you need it to get electricity. Now you need to get this. So when this happens, you just have to say no. Just say no. Just say I'm not doing it. And 9 times out of 10, they will back off at least for a while. At least for a while. But the nice thing I also want to mention in Italy is if they got hit the hardest in Europe, which I think they did. I could be wrong. Someone can fact check me, or someone can check me on that. Maybe there were other countries that got hit as bad or similar. I know Spain got hit pretty hard too. But to see them protesting and wanting liberty, if they got hit the hardest in Europe, should tell you something. Should tell you, despite as bad or as you think this is or isn't, and you can look at the CDC and make your own judgments, that even in the midst of what people would say is a really bad disease, people still want freedom. People still are protesting this. 3 million is pretty huge. If you look at the population of Italy, Italy is not, in my opinion, like a huge, I mean, it's like, I think 59 million or 60 million. So 3 million is a significant percent of people. Yeah, it's the minority, but as Ayn Rand said, the individual is the smallest minority, and there's a minority of 3 million people who are against this. Or who have not taken part in this procedure, despite they're saying, hey, we're not going to pay you and you need to show this to do any kind of work. And don't think, people are watching this in the US, this can't happen here. You have to say no. For the extent, even though I really dislike this meme, people start posting a thing with Greg Abbott, which I like some things he does and I don't, just like anybody else. I'm not a cheerleader for Abbott or DeSantis. I want to make that very clear. But I like that he did the anti-mandate against mandates. That doesn't make me a statist. It just makes me against bad policy. Like, okay, fine. I'll give him like a thumbs up. Just like, someone who inadvertently is working for a government agency, they do something good. Okay, I can give them a thumbs up. Like the local police helped me, when I had a problem. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to advocate for statism. The good thing is, it seems as though a lot of people here, Southwest Airlines, they're winning. In-N-Out Burger, which I've never ate, maybe it's pretty good. They said no. So we just need more and more of that. And we need to take inspiration from Italy, because they are not only fighting this green pass, 3 million people get it. And not all of them are getting, hit by water cans, but some people are getting pummeled with water cannons too. So they're really willing to, some people are willing to go all in for this in the place where you would think that, oh, they got hit the worst with this virus. Wouldn't they all want to get it? And apparently the answer is no. So that should at least, if nothing else, be like, something puzzle pieces don't fit here with what the media is telling me. Are they lying? Could the media be lying? Could we have lied? As Don Lemon and Sanjay Gupta have said. So
the real question is it happening in the U.S. and they're just not showing it?
Yeah, and that's
you would think.
Yeah, and that's what I actually feel. It's happening, in the U.S. as well. I don't think, not to say the U.S. isn't special with the, ideals of freedom and some of the founding documents, which I have some criticisms of, and I like some things about. but it can't. The big thing is in America, it can happen here. There's no magical thing. There's not a way that the government's just going to say, oh, there's a Bill of Rights. I guess I should not be an authoritarian. Sorry,
Yeah.
it was my bad. And I used to think like that. Trust me. I used to get in Facebook arguments and say, oh, I quoted Rothbard and I won. Before this stuff happened, I don't need to do anything in politics. I don't need to run. That's lame. I want to be one of the cool kids and just sit there and quote like Rothbard and Triple H, Hans Hermann Hoppe, and quote Ron Paul and call it a day. But if you're an authoritarian, you don't care about that. Tom Wolfe isn't going to call me and be like, Kareem, you had a good show today. I made all these mistakes. My bad. I'm going to do this, get rid of property tax. I'm going to, do A, B, and C. I'm going to be against. No, he doesn't care.
No, but if a 3% of the state stood around the Capitol for a full weekend or around the governor's house, it would be a different story. It'd be on the news.
Yes,
that's the thing,
and that's what we need to do. Also, I do want to highlight. I was talking to another co-host, Danny Beachrum. We're also planning just to keep this. We don't have a defined date yet because I'm trying to. Work schedules are always confusing. And, everybody has family life, and that's confusing. But we also want to do a Mises Caucus protest or a general protest at the nation's capital to kind of get like a little bit of publicity. And we could even do one in Harrisburg. As far as I'm concerned, more to Americans, the Pennsylvanians, because I consider every state a country. That's why I'm more on the articles side than the Constitution side. Yeah, if we do 3%, imagine if you got 3 million in Harrisburg, 1 million in Pittsburgh, and 1 million in Philadelphia. That's not overly that's a lot of people, but that's not impossible. Just saying we're tired of all of this. And not just the mandate, taxes, everything. Just we're tired of all of this. We're tired of the Fed's overreach. Do something about it. Something would be done about it. And the nice thing is, as far as I'm concerned, you wouldn't even need to elect anybody, although that helps. But you wouldn't even need to elect anybody to get that to work. But I have some good news. Maybe it's some good news. I don't know. I'm skeptical if it's good. But we all know how Australia looked. Australia was basically, in my opinion, the worst one when it came down to tyranny. Like, there were even memes with the Taliban saying, if you don't like it, you can always go, live in Melbourne. I don't know if it's true. Xi Jinping, the leader of the CCP, even said Australia's taken it too far, which if he said that, I agree with him.
Yeah. Okay. If he said that, oh boy.
Yeah. I don't know if he said, I don't have any confirmed. I just heard that hearsay, but I would agree. But here's the thing. Melbourne eased the lockdown, and I think so did Sydney. Melbourne, which has spent more time under COVID, authoritarianism, literally just shutting down everything. It was ridiculous. People were getting arrested for eating KFC. I don't even know, hey, if you're going to sneak out and get something to eat, at least make it healthy, I guess. But
desperate times, man. Desperate times.
Desperate times. Although, hey, if you want KFC, that's the thing. But Melbourne, which has spent more time under this COVID authoritarianism than any other city in the world, is set to lift the stay-at-home orders this week. Officials said Sunday. By Friday, when some curbs, we lifted, the Australian city of 5 million people will have been under 6 lockdowns, totaling 2 weeks to flatten the curve. 6 lockdowns, totaling 262 days, or nearly 9 months since March 2020. I don't know how they just had. There were protests. I don't know. I would have lost it.
Yeah.
Almost lost it during 2020. Australia and other media say this is the longest in the world, exceeding a 234-day lockdown in Buenos Aires. So while Rona keeps rising in Victoria, sure, I'm skeptical of that, of which Melbourne is the capital. The state's double-down vaccine or medical procedure rate is set to reach 70% this week, allowing for ease in restrictions, which I don't like. To me, this is good and bad. I like to see restrictions go down, but I don't like to see people comply with what they want to get rid of restrictions. They're saying today is a great day. Daniel Andrews, whatever. Today's a day when Victorians can be proud of what they achieved. So, and they said the new strategy that they're doing makes lockdowns highly unlikely once 80% of the population gets this. As of the weekend, around 60% of Australians have got it, and health officials said on Sunday that quarantine-free travel from New Zealand's South Island, where there is no outbreak, will resume on Wednesday, and the government has also been open to discussions between the two countries. Here's what I want to say, because a lot of this stuff is really nuanced. Great, they're getting rid of restrictions. Thumbs up. The thing that annoy me here is this, that people went along and said, I'm going to get this medical procedure. I'm going to go through all the hoops to get rid of this lockdown. So I'm skeptical of two things, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Is this really the end? Because I feel like, they're like, we beat COVID, but climate lockdown or this lockdown, or I don't know. There's kangaroos out there, or there's marsupials jumping from trees. We need to lock down again. Or there's like that ant or spider that chases you, I guess, or jellyfish, or, someone got stung by a jellyfish. Because I think this started because one old guy, unfortunately, passed away from this. Who knows if it's true or not. But I feel they're still going to make a dumb thing and say, you're locked down again, jump through more hoops. And really, it kind of annoys me that even though they beat the lockdowns, they did it by complying. I would have rather, even though there were protesters, I would rather see in Italy where there's millions of them saying no. But what do you think about Australia? Are they going for another lockdown?
Oh, most likely in the future. I mean, emergency powers are never given back. That's been historically taught. But the first thing I question is the vaccination numbers. Are they really at 70%, or is this something like they had enough resistance and now they're fluffing we finally hit the 70%, we're good, we're going to back out. Don't throw us out of the government yet. That would be the first thing to bring up. You can't even trust the numbers when it comes to cases. Why are you going to trust the vaccine rate? I mean, why have an unanswered question? It's true. And two, I think that at some point, boosters might come into question. Oh, we got another Delta variant or something like that. And then now you got to get your boosters. I mean, you got to get 70% of that. And then before you know it, everybody's downloading an app on their phone, and you have to have it everywhere you go. And you have to check in. And okay. Yeah. No, I honestly think we're headed that direction. It's been proven, and you see it around the world.
Yeah, and that's my problem here. A lot of people celebrating, hey, we beat the lockdowns. Isn't that great? We beat this virus. It was never about a virus. It's never been about a virus, in my opinion. And, you can debate the medical side of it, which I tell people, hey, I'm open to that debate, but we can do it on a separate forum. The fundamental question is, why do I have to jump through hoops from some central institution who, in my opinion, doesn't even care about health? Because you had cops in Australia, if you saw this, literally beating people down. Well, if you care about people's health, I don't know, maybe you wouldn't have cops attacking people when they're walking through nature by themselves. Heck, there's already enough dangerous things in Australia, in my opinion, in nature, which I've seen some crazy stuff there. I went through a thread and I'm just scrolling through. I'm like, oh, what is that? I'm like, oh, what is that? I'm like, dude, this is scary. This is coming out of a horror movie or survival game. I'm like, all right, I'm not walking through the woods in Australia, but the fact that cops are attacking people when they're walking through the woods in Australia tells me this is never about health. I think that's a very, very simplistic argument. I'm not saying anything that anybody can't rationally think and go, maybe this isn't about health, and why did you jump through these hoops? So I'm kind of, I get it. I'm kind of happy about it. Okay, they kind of beat it, but why? First of all, I'm annoyed that they complied to the level that they did, and I'm annoyed that they kind of are saying, it's highly unlikely this and these numbers. And if it's so effective, why don't you want 100%? Is always my question. Why is it 80%? Is there 20% that have some magical thing? If you think it's the best thing ever, none of this actually makes logical sense when you break it down. When they just say something and people accept it, that's my problem. If it's about health, why are cops beating people up? And if it's the best thing in the world, Wouldn't you want 100%? Why is there what percentage magically makes a virus not a virus anymore, not dangerous anymore? It doesn't make sense. And I'm not a health professional, but
right. Well, like you said, 70%, vaccination rate. There's 30% people that are non-compliant. I'll take 30%. That
yeah,
30% to say no. It's a good start.
that's a good start. But my fundamental question is, if I'm an authoritarian and I think this thing is the best thing ever, like even take a good thing. If I become an authoritarian and say everybody should work out because everybody needs to be fit, why wouldn't I want 100% of people doing it? Bar people who can't, but why wouldn't I want like everybody who's able to? Why would I stop at a certain? Oh well, we got 50% of people working out in the United States, so I'm going to drop the workout mandate. To me, it doesn't make sense. If you think it's the best thing ever, why would you stop there? Why are they making arbitrary numbers? I think they want to say, in my opinion, get the majority of people to comply. So next time we roll out our climate lockdown or this lockdown, or marsupial lockdown, whatever it is in Australia.
Oh, well, government knows best, right?
Yeah, jellyfish lockdown. A jellyfish got 2 people. Did they die? No, but they got burnt. Lockdown for 200 days. Like,
right.
Like I think Steve Irwin can make his own decisions. No, he can't. So that's pretty much like my thought in Australia. They're going to get another one. I don't know if it's going to be on this or that, but if people keep jumping through hoops and saying, I got to jump through this hoop and that hoop and this hoop and comply with this and that, they're just going to make more hoops. You're going to be jumping through. And then like you're saying, you have a social credit score, an app on your phone, and you'll have to like, either comply with this arbitrary authority or that. And that's kind of what that's what frustrates me. That's what really, really just kind of annoys the heck out of me, is that people still don't want to question authority, and they don't want to look into anything that might contradict the official narrative. And as far as I'm concerned, once I watch news after 9/11, I'm like, 2 planes took down 3 buildings. Maybe the official narrative's wrong. Maybe it was wrong on JFK. Maybe it was wrong on Rona. Maybe it's wrong on just about everything you thought. Maybe the Gulf of Tonkin you could look into. And then even going back to, heck, when I started going down this, maybe they don't want you to go down, because I'm even watching. I don't even like Alex Jones, but I'm watching like, oh, World War II. They knew about it. They knew about Pearl Harbor. Like, what isn't orchestrated at this point? What aren't they sitting around in Bilderberg saying, hey, what can we do next?
Don't melt too many brains.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Speaking of melting brains, let's talk about a guy who ate one. This will be our last story of the day. I just like it. So I like Joe Rogan a lot. Not necessarily because I like Joe Rogan in the sense that, I agree with everything he does. He's done some weird stuff. I first, started watching him when he did Fear Factor, and his stand-up's funny when he did Dr. Phil. And I like his talk show. He brings a lot of good guests on, David Lee Roth, Ben Greenfield, and he brought Sanjay on, and I think you might have seen the clip. They called the COVID treatment, ivermectin horse dewormer. And the thing I really like he asked is, he didn't let him off the hook. Most people are like, well, okay, fine, moving on. That's what I see in the news so much, especially the mainstream media, or even with other media, like Dan Bongino. If Trump comes on, he lets him off the hook. If Biden comes on a left network, they let him off the hook. Trump comes on Alex Jones, let him off the hook. Biden, this left-wing personality comes on, let them off the hook. But Joe didn't let him off the hook. And he said, do you think that's a problem when your news network lies? And I think if you're going to do any kind of coverage, you can give your own opinion like I do here, but at least state the facts. And what happened, if people hadn't watched this clip, I recommend YouTube it. CNN's medical correspondent, Sanjay Gupta, who did eat brains, admitted to podcast host Joe Rogan that was improper for the network to claim Rogan took horse dewormer as a COVID treatment. And on Wednesday, the installment of the Joe Rogan Experience grilled the doctor on why somebody like him, who already had it and has antibodies, should get this medical procedure. And he said, by the way, glad you're better, Gupta said. Thanks. You're probably the only one at CNN who's glad. The rest of them are lying about me taking horse medication. That bothered you. Should bother you too, Rogan shot back. They're lying on your network about people taking human drugs versus drugs for veterinary. Calling it horse dewormer is not the most flattering thing. And I get that, Gupta concerned. It's a lie, Rogan pushed back. It's a lie on the news network, and it's a lie that they're conscious of. It's not a mistake. They're unfavorably framing it as veterinary medicine. Mm-hmm. And then, as it goes, and we can keep going, but he said, why would they lie? I can afford people medicine. And it's ridiculous. It's just a lie. Don't you think a lie like that's dangerous on a news network? When you know they're lying, do you think that's a problem with your news network? What did they say? And he said it was prescribed to him by a doctor, and they shouldn't call it horse dewormer. Does it bother you that a network you work for outright lied about taking it? And then he says they shouldn't have said that. Why they do it, I don't know. You don't ask. You're the medical guy over there. And you should have asked that before coming on this podcast. You can check it out here. It's on Fox News. I'm not by any means a conservative or anything, but I think it's interesting on Fox News to get that exchange that they did break that down. I don't know if you saw the clip, but if you did, even small, I think, like I'm trying to build this up in another libertarian channel, the news media is not reliable anymore. Legacy media is not, because they have talking heads. Someone pays them to give an opinion, and they give an opinion. Then when you confront them, they say one thing, and then they say something different. And this is just very, very clear that they don't. And I think it's very clear to me. I'm not shocked, because I go back to incentives. I go back to purposeful behavior and say, if I'm a news network and Big Pharma is paying me to say one thing, I'm going to say one thing. And privately, I'll say something different. And that's, to me, what he's doing. But I'd love to hear, did you watch this clip, and what do you think of that exchange, if you did?
I didn't get a chance to get that clip, but what you were just saying there is it's a good indicator that, people need to really get away from the current media sources out there, conservative or not, to be honest. I don't find any of them to be accurate. It's time for people to start doing a little bit of their own research. It was the Nazi minister of propaganda said that you tell a lie long enough, loud enough, and often enough, that people will believe it. Yeah. And you put it on 4 or 5 different channels, different co-hosts, everybody has their favorite, and you say the same thing and you brainwash people into believing it, it creates more division. And honestly, I think that's the end goal. A lot of this stuff that's going on is just to create division. And I really want to know what's going on behind the curtains. Not many people take the time to sit down and read legislation that's getting introduced in the Senate or in Congress or anything like that, and read these bills that they're passing in 2,000 pages. Scroll through some of them. Scroll through the OSHA emergency temporary standard that they're talking about releasing here shortly. Scroll through the base work that they're using from the previous one. About halfway through the last one, they said that they will incentivize people who are vaccinated in the workforce by giving them less restrictions to coerce, in a term, coerce unvaccinated people to get the shot.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
People aren't reading that stuff, though. They're flat out admitting it in their own documents that that's what they're doing.
Yeah. And I asked, and I'll end with this. I asked a pharmacy student, actually, I had a chance to talk to him, and just said, hey, in your opinion, why are certain cures being more emphasized than others? And it's like, if you want the real answer, the honest answer, which no one's going to say, but simply put, it's just there's money in one thing, and there's money in not any money in the other. So we're not going to look at it. And that's really the extent of it, to me, at least on the surface. And that's kind of all I want to get at, is stop looking at legacy media and even independent media sources, even big media sources, when they say things that don't sound right, when they say things like that. I think I was watching one thing where Trump said, "Oh, based on this medical procedure, I saved 100 million people." I'm like, how's that possible with a 99.9% rate? Or that first Biden says, "Oh, well, if you get this procedure, you can't get it, but wait, actually, you can get it." But the FDA said this, and then the FDA said that, and then the FDA says if you eat pasta, and they change their mind every day, and the CDC comes out with one opinion, and I even think if you're a hardcore like super statist. I love all this stuff. Like, I love the CDC. I love the FDA. I love Fauci. I love all that. I can't even keep up with it because it changes one day, 2 masks, 3 masks. No, you can. If you get this, you can't get it. This and this and that. The only consistent people to me are actually the doctors who I've talked to, and they say, "Hey, I'm going to prescribe you this or that," and then they have an opinion why. And I think that's who people should take a look at. Take a look at doctors who at least have a consistent opinion. Talk to your doctor and see what they say and go with them. Don't go with a podcast host. And on top of that, stop watching legacy media because they're there to get clicks. They're there to get ratings. And not to say I don't want to get people to my show. I do. But I like also spreading the message of liberty and having fun with it more than just, okay, well, Rupert Murdoch said this is what we're talking about. And if you don't talk about what Rupert Murdoch wants, or if you say anything Rupert Murdoch doesn't like, you're gone. If you say anything that the CEO of CNN doesn't like, you're gone, or you're not going to air, or you're going to have problems. So people need to realize that the corporate establishments that they're against, especially people on the left who say they're anti-corporation, if you're really anti-corporation, then you should realize the corporate establishment owns all these news networks, and they make them fight against each other. CNN's fighting Newsmax. This one's fighting this. They're shaking hands behind the curtain, just like presidential candidates.
Yep.
So that's basically a wrap-up of everything I wanted to talk about. Thank you for joining me. So we discussed Alec Baldwin, just saying elites aren't as knowledgeable or as smart as you might think. Stop taking advice from them. See how you can better your life without having to listen to the quote-unquote experts. Find the experts that you really find are experts based on their credentials and your own personal experience. Then, sorry, I had to clear my throat. We talked about Sundan. Is the military taking the government down a good idea? Probably not, but I like the spirit of wanting to dissolve it. Let's figure out throughout the world how we can help other people through decentralized means, figure out ways to establish property rights and social cooperation without central institutions. And that, goes for Italy, where they're protesting against this green pass, and even Australia, where I feel there will be a new lockdown implemented. And finally, a good way to get away from all this is stop watching legacy media, because Joe Rogan made a good point, and I even put it in my story. If they're willing to lie about a medical treatment, which is a big thing, but there's like bigger things like wars and stuff like that. They're willing to lie about a medical treatment. What else are they lying about? Are they lying about Syria? Are they lying about, Iraq, which is true? Are they lying about Yemen? What else are they lying about? And I bet you if you ask that simple question, you're like, okay, they're lying about one thing. There's a slippery slope of things you'll find they're lying about. Take a look. And last but not least, you can find this at The Essential Libertarians on YouTube. And once more, if you're interested in keeping the Ron Paul movement going, Ron Paul 2.0, The Decentralized Revolution, based on freedom, individuals, and Austrian economics, take a look at the LP Mises Caucus, where you can find information about how to join, resources, podcasts, and articles discussing the imperative ideas and concepts of individual liberty. You can scroll through here and find a lot of great resources as well, and join if you feel you are of the mind of a strong person who's interested in bringing liberty to their town, state, or wherever you live in America or around the world. With that being said, do you have any last thoughts or anything you want to plug, Caleb?
No last thoughts on our discussion, but we'll be having a podcast, me and co-host Chris, called "Why Liberty," coming out here shortly. We're going to talk about the essential part of liberty, what it means to each individual, and what we can do to restore it. Is the Constitution powerful enough, or do we need to focus on other options?
Yeah, I have a feeling Lysander Spooner might come into that, and different reasons why.
There's a few.
Yeah. So, where can people find that, or where will they be able to?
It will be posted on my page here then, and we're going to have a website also.
All right. So, everyone, go to Caleb Shreve and take a look at his Facebook. Do you know when it's going to be posted?
Within about 2 weeks, just waiting for our equipment to show up. And you can also find me on Twitter at Man of Liberty 76.
All right. Excellent. So, we got all that. Check out Caleb's awesome podcast and go follow his handle if you are on that platform as well. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me for the Essential Libertarians, giving you the tools you need for self-governance. We'll see you in the next episode.